Fuck it.
Fuck it. Fuck it.
Hey, mama. If you are a mom and are tired of the wash, rinse, repeat burnout cycle of motherhood, this podcast is for you. If you feel lonely and isolated in your motherhood journey, this podcast is for you. If you feel like you have completely lost your identity since your babies were born, this podcast is for you. If you feel like every other mom has it together except for you, this podcast is for you. My name is Amanda, and I'm a life coach dedicated to teaching every mom the tools she needs to liberate herself off the back burner. I am living proof that a woman can be present and loving to her kids while also being a whole-ass person outside of being that kid's mom. The secret? Learning when to say fuck it. Hey guys, I am so happy to be here with you. This is like one of my favorite spaces online. Another one of my favorite spaces is the mom summer camp that I'm running with my Fuck It Friday buddies. So if you have not joined us and it is before August 9th, 2024, when you are hearing this, come join us. It's a free group that we're running on Facebook for moms during summer because summer requires like a little bit specific care for us because it just brings a different level of stress, right? Because your kids are home with you all day long. Or if you work outside of the home, you're arranging care for them, paying out the ass for summer camp or daycare or a nanny or somebody. It's a lot. I absolutely love that little community that we built. But this space, I love it so much. And I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. Ooh, I just shook my desk. I need to be more careful about not doing that. So some of you might not know this about me, but in a former life, I was a baker and cake decorator. My aspiration was actually to have my own cake decorating business and like blog / YouTube channel. So I've done like some pretty incredible cakes. I'm not even going to try to be humble. It's stupid. Like why? They were incredible. But then once I shifted out of that, I just got kind of like too busy to bake. But in Mom Summer Camp, this week is creative week. And so it's all about obviously tapping into your creative side. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do with that. If it was going to be like doing some adult coloring books or if it was going to be singing more. But actually, I've already been singing more often and working on just my vocal range and all of that stuff. But yeah, I just started baking. It just kind of like came to me naturally and it's felt really good. So yeah, I've been sharing my baking creations. They're very, very, very humble creations. I'm not doing any 20-hour cakes because I don't have time for that. But that's felt really good. I have a lemon cake that's downstairs right now that I'm going to pair with a raspberry filling for a raspberry lemonade cake. And I'm going to film myself putting the cake together and sharing it on socials. Not that it has anything to do with life coaching, but it kind of does because it's just that like taking time for stuff that brings me joy. And it's so important that we do that. And we can't always be like baking a cake every week, right? But you can be intentional with planning things that bring you joy instead of only planning the things that bring your kids joy or your partner joy, or only planning the things that have to be done, because that's where so many of us live, right? Just like we're just going, just like ticking things off the to-do list. And then we crash. And then we wonder why we're like always complaining all the time. We wonder why we feel unfulfilled. We wonder why we feel exhausted all the time because we're not making space for joy. That's why. And yes, like the to-do list has to get done to a certain point. There are things on there that can be thrown into the fuck it bucket, right? Or things that could be delegated, or things that could just be like, you know what? You can wait till tomorrow. That's fine. I am going to not do this thing so that I can do fill in the blank thing that brings you joy. Because I understand baking is not for everybody, and that's fine. So in me sharing my joy, I'm hoping that it will inspire all of you watching it to make some time for joy for yourself too. You don't have to wait until your kids are grown and out of the house. Because if you do, then you won't know how to create joy for yourself. You won't know how to be happy outside of your kids. So that's what I've been doing with my life this week, and resting a lot because my kids are with their dad. And so if you are also a divorced co-parenting parent listening to this, please make time for extra rest, for extra joy for yourself when your kids are with their other parent. Do not fill in that time, that extra time that you have, with extra tasks and extra chores. Don't try to oh, well, the kids are gone, so I can deep clean the house from ceiling to basement. Sometimes there is a time and a place for that, right? But if that's all you're doing every single time your kids are with their other parent, you're missing a huge opportunity to be pouring back into yourself. Another thing that I did the other day was we got a random summer storm. They never cease to amaze me because I'm born and raised in Southern California, now living in Wisconsin. And so in California, it only rains in our winter seasons. It doesn't rain in the summer. It's very rare. And so the summer storms out here just fascinate me. They still do. I'm almost 11 years into living in Wisconsin, and I'm still just mesmerized by the summer storms. But it came out of nowhere. It was a sunny day, and then the clouds started darkening, and you could hear thunder, and then just snap of the fingers, sheets of rain pouring from the clouds. And it was late afternoon, early evening. I was going to come back to my office and continue working. I think I had to, because I think this was Wednesday, and my podcast comes out on Thursdays, as you guys know, and I was still editing that one together. So I needed to finish that. But first I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit on my porch and just watch the storm. And so I did. I sat on the porch for 30 minutes and just with a cup of tea and just watched the rain fall. And it was so relaxing. I love sitting outside and just enjoying nature. I love being in nature. We all need connection with nature because we're all everything, without getting too terribly woo on you guys. We're all made of the same stuff. Our energy is the same as any other living thing's energy. And it just does something to your soul being outside. And I saw a commercial. Okay, mind you, it was a commercial, but it said something. It was we spend 91 or 93% of our time indoors every day. And that number just seemed so high to me. But then I thought about my day to day, and I was like, yeah, that kind of tracks. That tracks. And those 30 minutes that I took to sit on my porch and just watch the rainstorm. I didn't have my phone on me. I wasn't multitasking. I did not let my brain go and wander and think about work or my business or anything that I was stressed about. I literally just sat and I just existed, How often do you just give yourself a chance to just exist without doing anything, without thinking about doing stuff or problem solving things? It was so relaxing. I almost said relaxful. I'm really glad I caught myself, but that doesn't even matter because I called myself out. I don't know why my brain does that sometimes. It puts the most random words together. It doesn't make any sense. So that's what I've been doing this week, guys. Just a lot of pouring into myself. And I feel so rested and rejuvenated and completely ready to receive my crazy kids in 2 days when they come back to me. I've gotten really good at filling in this kid free time with Amanda boosting activities. And I'm proud of myself for that because I'm definitely a recovering workaholic. I have not worked late into the night. I have not deep cleaned the house. I did start working on certain problem areas of the house. But see, typically what I would do in the past is go on a cleaning spree and clean for 4 hours straight, like a crazy person. And then my body would be aching afterwards and I would feel like, yes, I did it. But also I was exhausted and my body hurt. And, so I've been working on cleaning projects a little bit at a time. And once I was doing it for a couple of hours and I didn't have the frantic energy I used to have either. I was just okay, let's look at this one corner and do this one corner. And now let's move to this corner. And now I'm thirsty. So I'm just going to take 5 minutes to go drink some water and just stop for a minute, just take my time. But then also I had started working on the living room after working on the kitchen and I didn't get through the entire living room, but I let that be okay because I got tired. It was the evening. It was time to make dinner. And after I made dinner, and I did make dinner for myself, I made myself a yummy dinner instead of just reheating whatever leftovers I could find. And then when I was done eating, I was like, you know what? I'm just tired and I just want to chill. And so I'm going to let it be okay that I didn't finish the entire living room and I will pick up where I left off tomorrow. And I'm so proud of myself because you guys, I was not that person before at all. I was not that person. I'm amazed with my own damn self. Today, I have one of my favorite guests. I love all of my guests that I bring onto the podcast, obviously, because if I didn't I wouldn't let them on my podcast. But Barb is so awesome. She reached out to me and because as you guys have probably noticed, if you've been here for a while, I only have fellow moms on the podcast because my goal here is to share other moms' stories because this is a podcast for moms. And Barb reached out to me and she said, so I'm going to start with, I'm not a mom, but I just had to reach out because I really love your podcast name because I love using the word fuck too. I'm a boundaries coach. And if you think that would be a useful topic for your audience, then maybe we can connect. Duh. Of course, boundaries is a useful topic for moms because most of us have zero boundaries, especially with our kids. We have no boundaries with our kids. I didn't even know I was allowed to have boundaries with my kids until a few years ago. And I was like, oh, wait, why didn't anyone tell me this before? So I absolutely adore this conversation. It has so much goodness. There's so much for all of us to learn from what you're about to hear. Because if you are someone who is finding yourself constantly saying yes when you want to say no and harboring resentment towards other people because they asked too much of you, this podcast is going to change your life. If you let it. Okay. But I was just editing it right before I hopped on to record this little intro that I'm recording for you guys now. And my gosh, I flagged so many different areas of the whole episode that could be like clips for social media. I have way too many. I have to go through them and and really like pick my favorite moments because that's how good this episode is. So I hope you guys listen to the end and really like get curious. If you find yourself getting defensive, then this is probably for you. Pause it and go and take a minute until you can come back to it, but please come back to it. It's really, really good. And if you would like to connect with Barb, I am putting her information in the show notes here, along with the link to Mom Summer Camp, so you can come join us. And I hope you guys have a fantastic week. All right. Welcome everyone to another episode of Fuck It Mothering. I'm your host, Amanda Haro, and I have another lovely guest for you, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Barb Nangle. I am a boundaries coach, a former people pleaser, rescuer, fixer, savior. And I focus on working with women who say yes when they really want to say no, and who neglect themselves because they are so focused on other people. And I have a feeling there are a lot of women like that in your audience.
Yes, because there are just a lot of women like that in general.
Everywhere, but especially moms.
Yes, because we're all socialized to be people pleasers and people fixers.
Absolutely.
Which is why I just adore your work so much. I love that you just like laser focus on that specifically because it is so needed. Oh my gosh. So Barb, what led you to this work?
So I have to tell my personal story. So I hope it's okay if I do that. So
Yes.
when in 2015, when I was 52, I hit a codependent bottom. And if you don't know what codependent means, welcome to the club. I had never heard that term before. And it essentially means people that are focused on that which is outside themselves. So typically other people, what other people are doing, thinking, what they're saying, what they're thinking about you. And they are constantly trying to like meet their needs by focusing out there. And it's like, well, if everybody else around me is okay, then I'll be okay. And it's astonishing that I had never heard that word because I started therapy when I was about 15. So that's about 37 years of therapy, not continuous, but close. I read a gajillion self-help books. I did workshops, workbooks, work groups, retreats, physical fitness, health, spirituality, support group, like you name it. And the fact that I never heard that word was astonishing to me. And the way that it happened is that I was volunteering on a project at my church to serve homeless people. And right around that time, a homeless guy named Dan started coming as a parishioner to my church, and we became friendly. And I felt like, oh, this is like God giving me this gift so that when I serve homeless people, that they are people, not like the homeless. And he and I became very friendly. And a couple months into our friendship, there was a snowstorm. I live in New Haven, Connecticut. And I invited him to stay at my home, which I now know is not normal. And he did. And then he stayed another time and another time. And within a few weeks, he was practically living with me. And I felt trapped in my own home. He was an addict, an alcoholic, probably now, I think, a narcissist or had a borderline personality disorder. And this guy fucked with my head in a way that nobody ever had before. So I was talking about him one day in therapy, and in mid-sentence, I stopped and I went, oh my God, do you think I need to go to Al-Anon? And my therapist was like, yes. And if people don't know what Al-Anon is, it's a 12-step recovery program for the loved ones of alcoholics. So most people have probably heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. That was the first 12-step program ever. And you may wonder, why do the loved ones of alcoholics need to have a program? And that is because
I do not wonder that at all.
Yeah. Well, some people might. And so the reason is that the things we do sort of naturally to try to, quote, help the alcoholic to stop drinking or to get into rehab or to go to meetings or whatever are actually counterproductive. We start trying to be controlling. We start focusing entirely on them. We neglect the crap out of ourselves, and we make everything about them. And it just doesn't really work. And it causes resentment between you and them on both ends and all that. So I'd heard of Al-Anon. I don't know what I put into Google, Amanda, but when I put in Al-Anon, I came across this word codependent, and I was like, wait, what? So I started going to Codependence Anonymous, very quickly felt a sense of relief. And I remember very early saying to someone, I think I need to be reparented. But I didn't know that that was a thing. I thought I made it up.
Really? You were just like intuitively like recognizing
it was clear,
that.
like something didn't happen for me when I was growing up.
Wow.
So a few weeks into my Codependence Anonymous, which we call Coda recovery, I went to go visit a friend in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and she had been in Alcoholics Anonymous for over 10 years at the time and just raved about how radically her life changed. So I was like, oh, hey, I started going to Coda. We started talking about 12-step recovery, and she's like, you know what? While you're here, let's see if we can find a Coda meeting. And she couldn't, but she found one for ACA. Okay, so I knew of the program as ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, but it never occurred to me that I qualified for it. And it turns out the name is actually Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. For that, I qualify. And when I walked in, one of the first things they said was, we reparent ourselves. And I was like, what? And then they read the list of the 14 traits of an adult child. Yeah. And that's affectionately called the laundry list. And I was like, oh my God, this is so me. And my friend tells me I sobbed the whole meeting. I don't remember that. I bought the literature, came home to New Haven, Connecticut, started going to that program. After a year, I stopped going to Coda, but that turned out to be like a higher powered moment because I then got into Overeaters Anonymous. And I'm now down over 100 pounds from my top weight. I've been at my goal weight for over 6 years. And so like all that work that I did before recovery, all that personal development stuff, the way I think of it, Amanda, is that that work scratched the surface of the iceberg of my life, and recovery melted the iceberg of my life. So for me, the 12 steps are where it's at. And I learned how to build healthy boundaries through this sort of meandering, haphazard process in 12-step recovery. I didn't even know that was what I was doing in the beginning. But after like 2 to 3 years, really having good boundaries and seeing, I think because my core wound is codependence, and seeing the just utterly changed nature of my life, I decided to start doing some reading about boundaries. So I kind of retroactively understood, okay, here's what was going on before and after in the process of changing them. But while I was reading those books, it was all words. And I guess I'm a pretty visual person. So I started drawing images to depict the principles that I was understanding. And then those images turned into handouts, which turned into a workbook, which is now the spine of my boundaries coaching program. And I have created a way to accelerate the process of building boundaries for people so that they can do it in a matter of weeks rather than through, a meandering haphazard process over a couple of years. And what I find is that boundaries permeate every single area of our lives. They mostly affect our relationships with ourselves and other people. It's mostly the main reasons that people come to me. Typically, a lot of them are in 12-step recovery, not everybody. But a lot of them are because they come to me from my podcast, most of them, which is called Fragmented to Whole Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. And I started it because there is so much wisdom in recovery that's just not making its way out into the world. But they typically come to me either with a relationship issue in the romantic department, a relationship issue with an adult child, or really significant difficulty at work. I tend to work with professional women who look on the outside like they have it together. Meanwhile, internally, they're a mess. Maybe they're enabling a spouse or a partner or an adult child. Their emotions are a mess. Maybe they have a string of dysfunctional relationships. I'm basically coaching former me because, I'm a professional woman. I looked like I had it together on the outside. And in many respects, I did, as do most of my clients. But they go, I like to think of it as from the boardroom to the bathroom to cry. I've worked with some really high powered women, and either their dating lives are a mess. They're enabling somebody, typically either an adult child with a mental health disorder and or a substance use problem, or a spouse or a partner, perhaps a sibling, maybe a parent. But what they find is typically within a matter of even 4 or 5 weeks of working with me that they have some major shifts. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way, what we believe, like, for example, I used to believe that I was so helpful to people because I was nice. What I learned in recovery was that I was looking for people's approval. And actually, it's more like I was avoiding their disapproval. So I did not want people to think I was a bad person. And to me, bad person equals someone who says no and is unhelpful. And what's interesting is that I was a volunteeraholic before I got into recovery. And I actually, in terms of hours per week, give more service to my community now that I have healthy boundaries than I ever did as a volunteeraholic. But I do it by choice, not because I feel compelled to do it. I do it strategically. Like, where does my energy go? Like, what gives me energy to give? And I also fill my cup first. So instead of trying to always pour from an empty cup, I've learned to pour from the overflow. And the only way that you're going to have an overflow is if you fill your cup first. So a lot of people think it's selfish to engage in self-care or to put yourself first. And it's actually self-preservation. And it's selfless, because who doesn't want to receive from someone who's pouring from the overflow, right? Do you want to receive from somebody that's pouring from an empty cup? No, because they're probably resentful.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Right. And so self-care, most people think, oh, like getting a manicure or getting your hair done or getting a massage, like those things can be, but I'm talking about regular everyday things that fuel you, that energize you. People with healthy boundaries have boundaries around what they will tolerate and what they will not tolerate, around what's okay and what's not okay, with what they bring in and with what they don't allow in. And that includes things that energize them. For me personally, a large part of my self-care has to do with what I call my conscious contact with my higher power. So I have a whole, like a long runway into the morning, and I'm not a mom and never have been. So I get that I have the luxury of having more alone time than a lot of women do, but you can get little pockets of things that fuel you. The fact that if you are neglecting yourself, you're not going to neglect yourself into being a better mom. You are not going to neglect yourself into being a better person or a better, like, wife or neighbor or worker or daughter or sister or cousin. Like, you're not going to neglect yourself into that. And so, like, the mindset shift that it is not selfish, that you are not harming people when you put yourself first, when you set limits with people, like those things alone are game changing. And then I also, I teach empowered communication. I know for me, I did a lot of like beating around the bush and expecting people should know things. And I didn't know that I was expecting people to read my minds, but clearly that I was. And so people with healthy boundaries, like, I learned how to effectively communicate by setting boundaries. And one of the many amazing benefits is I'm now in the first and only healthy romantic relationship of my life. I happen to date men. So all of the men that I have dated in the past, I thought that the pattern was emotional unavailability, and it was, but the real pattern was codependence. And I had a large part in that. Like, I realized, well, one of the reasons why I had all these men who were emotionally unavailable was because I was emotionally unavailable, because what emotionally available man wants to be with a woman who is unavailable emotionally? And B, I was trying to find people that I could rescue, fix, and save. And I felt like I need to contribute way more to the relationship than they do. And even though I always liked myself, what I saw in recovery was that was not the behavior of a woman who felt worthy. It was not the
Mm-hmm.
behavior of a woman who loved herself. And I already knew I did not trust myself. And honestly, the process of learning how to build healthy boundaries over time got me to trust myself. I grew to love myself, and I truly feel worthy now. And guess what? I attracted a man, we've been together for 5.5 years now, who has healthy boundaries, is emotionally available, and we are like crazy in love. And you know how relationships kind of go up and down? We've been in
Yeah.
this like goo goo gaga, like crazy love stage for several months now, which is just like, how does this happen after 5.5 years? Like, I've never had this before. And it has everything to do with my healthy boundaries, because as soon as something bothers me, I tell him. As soon
Mm-hmm.
as something bothers him, he tells me. There's no like sand in my shoe kind of thing that
Yeah.
turns into like a blister and then I have to go to the
And then
doctor. You know, it's
opens
like,
and oozes and you have an infection that's threatening to
right,
kill you.
right. Yeah. I've never used that metaphor before, but I think that's a really good one because everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it started in the beginning of the relationship. I remember maybe 3 weeks into dating, I had invited him to come to something with me, and he didn't respond until it was over at 10 o'clock at night. And I said to him, I'm feeling really unsettled by the fact that you didn't get back to me. And this is via text. And I said to him, can you help me talk with you about this tomorrow? Because one thing that I've learned about at least heterosexual men is they like to be asked for help. And he was like,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So when I met up with him the next day, I said, I believe that this conversation is going to increase our intimacy. And I hope you do too. I've never spoken like that before. I've never said anything like I feel unsettled. I've literally just buried that crap, never said anything, and slowly but surely built bricks in the wall between me and my partner, thicker and higher wall over time. But at
Yeah.
first, this was the first time. And he said, what does it mean that you're unsettled? And I said, I actually don't know. That's why I said unsettled. And as we were, oh my goodness, as we were processing it, what he realized is that he was afraid to go to this event with me because I'm a very busy person. I'm an entrepreneur, and he is on disability and he has to manage his energy. And he was like, I do not want to get sucked into your world. He didn't even know that until we started processing it. And I said, well, thank you. I'm so glad that that came to light. And the real troublesome part for me was that you've been very communicative to me up until now, and you didn't communicate to me until after the event was over at 10 p.m. And he said, well, I thought that not responding to you was communicating to you. And I'm like, no. And so, like, that does not work for me.
Right.
And I get now that you didn't really know what the issue was and that was in us processing it. But like, I had never had a conversation like that. And it really just sort of set the tone for our entire relationship. And now we share what's okay and what's not okay. And one of the things that attracted me to him initially was he has really healthy boundaries. I didn't know that he had a chronic illness, but he didn't tell me the first date.
Right. You don't like open with that.
Right. And then what he said to me was, he said, write this down. I'm going to have you Google this, and it's going to tell you a lot about me. And so that was his way of saying, that I have it. Cause he said, you seem interested in me. And I was like, oh my God, like literally nobody's ever said that. Even when I've met men on dating apps, and it's very clear the point of us meeting is dating, we've never discussed we're dating and I'm interested in you. And when he said, you seem interested in me, I said, yes, I am. You have me curious. And I could say that to him because I said that to other people. But what I realized, Amanda, in that moment was I was interested in him, but I didn't yet know if I was attracted to him. And I realized that that meant in the past for me, my interest automatically meant I was attracted, that like those two concepts were fused to me and now they were separate. There was a boundary between these two concepts. And I can't tell you how many things.
Interesting.
Isn't it? isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like, so what I think of that as is there was a boundary between interest and attraction now that there wasn't before. So I was enmeshed with other people, and there were a lot of aspects of my life that were enmeshed like this. And then the way that he handled this situation made him more attractive to me. And then when I said to him, tell me how this illness affects your quality of life. And he proceeded to describe it. And he said, well, I wanted you to know that if we start dating, that this is going to be a part of my life. And like just the way that he handled it. And also like when he has this saying, he's like, I'm running out of gas. So he doesn't say, you're draining me or I gotta go. Like he lets me know, like I'm running out of gas. The time is coming for me to refuel, whatever that means, whether it's go home or lay down or sit down or go to the car, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, he has this wonderful way of communicating, and he also keeps the focus on himself, which is something I learned in building healthy boundaries. So for example, let's say you're riding in the car with your partner and they're driving sort of erratically. What a lot of people will say is, you're driving like a maniac. Well, to keep the focus on yourself, you would say, I don't feel safe.
Yes.
Right? So when you say you, they're much more likely to be defensive. And then when you say you're driving like a maniac, it's kind of an attack. And of course, they're going to go on the defensive, and then you're going to have a conflict, and you're going to blame it on them.
And it's not an absolute truth, because everybody has a different set of circumstances that would need to be met, like criteria, in order to think that that person is driving like a maniac. Like you can't say that as if it's absolute truth, because it's not, it's your opinion.
Yeah. But when you say, I feel unsafe, you've kept the focus on you. That's the actual issue.
Yes, exactly.
They're much less likely to be defensive, and actual communication is likely to happen, which is the reason we communicate with other people, so that we can have a back and forth understanding of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think, you know, one of my mantras with my clients is keep the focus on yourself, keep the focus on yourself. Like I literally say to them, here's my top 5 rules for setting boundaries. Keep the focus on yourself, 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 keep the focus on yourself. And it started, the first time I did it, I piloted a group coaching program, and I was just not getting the point across to the women in the group. And I was like, all right, here it is. And so I said that, and they all laughed, but it was the thing that they remembered, because I said it in this like really dramatic way. And it was top 5 rules. And so, you know, it's one of the top 2 or 3 concepts that I teach that tend to be the top things that people remember. And I teach a variety of ways to keep the focus on yourself. Because as codependents, as fixers, rescuers, saviors, enablers, people pleasers, we are so focused on other people. And the problem with that, Amanda, is you cannot control other people. But you can
that's not our job.
Control yourself. But if you are so fixated out there, and the reason it's an endless drain out there is because you can't control those things. So you're going to keep trying, and it's not going to have an effect. So even if you could focus on yourself, you would have no energy left with which to do it. But when you start focusing on yourself, it's astonishing the effect that you have. Like I have a client that I'm working with. We're halfway through our 12-week private coaching program, and I do this midpoint survey. And every week when I would meet with her, I was thinking, like, does she really need me? Like, she seems like she's got this. And I just don't feel like I'm having an effect. I read her survey and I was like blown away. Like, the reason she's got this is because of coaching with me. And she said, like, when I said, is there anything else that you want to add that I haven't asked about? She said, I have been in therapy on and off for 20 years, and I have never had this kind of an impact, even when I've been with a therapist for years. And it's been 6 weeks that we've been working together.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, I started crying. Like, I just am astonished. And, you know, she mentioned, because I'm on the spot here, I can't think of all the things that she mentioned, but she was like really understanding, like, I get to control my life.
Yeah.
I am like, stop waiting for other people to change, and I know that like in 12-step recovery, the serenity prayer is probably one of the things people know about it. And I think one of our tasks of life is to continually determine, is this something I can control or not? If it's something I can control, then I need the courage to change it, as the serenity prayer says. And if it's something I can't, then I get to find a way to accept it. And typically that means changing our minds.
Yep.
Like, I am now able to accept things that used to be unacceptable to me. And acceptance doesn't mean you like something. It means you stop fighting against it.
Mm-hmm.
You stop thinking things should be other than they are.
Exactly. You stop resisting the reality.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. So here's an example. I used to get pissed off when I would drive on the highway and there was traffic, as if there shouldn't be traffic on the highway, or at least not when I'm driving, right? Well, here's the thing, Amanda. Highways were built for traffic.
They were built for traffic,
specifically to funnel traffic, right? So I'm acting like, and what's interesting is that is actually an indicator of victim mentality, because I acted like traffic was happening at me or to me, and I took it personally. And coming out of victim mentality was hands down the biggest paradigm shift of my 12-step recovery. I am not the typical victim in terms of what a victim, someone who's been victimized, looks like. But people who have victim mentality have typically been victimized in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, they wouldn't develop this mentality. But when I started to see it, which was actually when I did my relationship inventory in recovery, I basically saw that in every single relationship, my thought was, if he would just fill in the blank, then everything would be okay. Well, I realized, oh my God, that's me acting like I have nothing to do with the status of any of these relationships. And I was like, oh crap. And then it turned out that I had that in my work relationships, with my boss, with my family, with my friends. And to this day, I am still coming out of it. It's something that I feel pretty safe in saying that all of my clients have victim mentality. But as soon as I realized, which happened during a traffic jam, that I had this belief that traffic should not be happening when I was on the highway, that I was fighting against reality, my driving changed in a heartbeat. So I used to be the kind of person who, I didn't do like the weaving in and out of traffic thing, but I was like always in the left lane, thinking people were going too slow, acting like they were in my way. And that changed immediately. Like the next time I got in the car, I drove in the right lane. I drove the speed limit. If somebody pulls out in front of me, what do I do now? I don't scream and yell inside my car. I stopped flipping people off out the windows years ago because I don't want to be shot. But I stopped doing that. And so I either slow down, or I speed up, or I swerve, whatever I need to do, because I don't want that stranger to steal my serenity. I was giving it away.
That's good.
So I got mad at people for, like, when there's a line in the grocery store, I spend time either like picking up a magazine that I want to look at, or reading my email, or doing social media, or playing a game on my phone, or chatting with, God forbid, chat with somebody in the line next to you. Right. Instead of being upset, like, oh my God, they're wasting my time, or I can't believe I always pick the wrong line. That's victim mentality. Mm-hmm. That is acting like you have no choices and no power. And what's really interesting is when you start building healthy boundaries, you start to realize you have way more control over your life than you think that you do. So instead of waiting for the world to change and for people around you to change, you decide, this is how I'm going to be. And then you do that. And sometimes you communicate those boundaries to other people with words, but sometimes you just start behaving differently.
Yeah.
And actually, here's something that one of my clients said to me yesterday. So she's been coaching with me for a few weeks now, and she went for a walk with her husband the other day. And he said to her, if there was one thing that I could change, that you could snap your fingers and I could change, that would improve our relationship, what would it be? And I was like, has he ever asked you anything like that ever before? And she was like, no. And I was like, what do you understand about where that came from? And she's like, I have changed. I've changed the way that I'm interacting with him. So like you literally can't change other people, but you can influence them by changing the dynamics of your relationship with them. So I love the metaphor of the dance that Harriet Lerner uses in the book, The Dance of Anger. She says, when you're dancing with a partner, if you change your steps, your partner has to change their steps or exit the dance. So if you change the dynamic, the steps in the dance of your relationship with anybody, they will change. Some people will just smoothly go along with you. Some people will resist and eventually go along with you. And some people will resist and will leave the dance. So it is possible that you might lose some people. And the way that I think of it is, if you lose some people, they've gotten out of the way so that you're real, like the people that are attracted to the real you, who's living your life on purpose, have room to get up close to you and to be near you. And, you know, one myth about boundaries is that they are like walls. I will say, if you have like a toxic or violent person in your life, you need a wall. So yes, in cases like that, yes, it's a wall. Most of the time, boundaries, I use the metaphor of it's like a fence with a gate in it. So it's flexible. And also you are the gatekeeper. So the gate opens from the inside only, which means if somebody's trampling on your property, it's because you let them in. It's not because they climbed the fence. You open the door and let them in. So you are the one that manages. If somebody doesn't honor your boundary, you have to do something. You have to have some kind of consequence. And most of the time, for most normal people, you just say, hey, you know, I asked you not to do that. Please don't do that. You know, so you just repeat yourself once. And there's a whole host of reasons why people don't honor our boundaries. Sometimes they just forget because you've never done it before, or they don't believe you because you've never done it before, or they have shitty boundaries. So they really and those are the people you really need to work the hardest with, because they have a hard time respecting other people's boundaries because they don't have them. And I know, like, I was that person. So I knew, well, I think I thought people were taking advantage of me, but it wasn't until I got well into the boundary building process that I realized, oh shit, I'm literally trampling all over other people's boundaries all the time. Like, I give people unsolicited advice all the time. I try to help people that don't even necessarily want or need help and don't even define their situation as problematic. You know, telling people what to do, controlling behaviors and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, learning how to build healthy boundaries means not only setting your own boundaries and, you know, enforcing consequences when they're not honored, but also honoring other people's boundaries. And it's a way better way of life. You know, I was actually laying in bed this morning, and one of my new dreams is I've just started I've just launched the professional speaking arm of my career. And my dream is to affect women in every sector. I literally just brainstormed a list of sectors of society. And I want to influence women in all of those sectors to stop saying yes when they want to say no and stop neglecting themselves, because they're so focused on other people. And I started thinking about, okay, if I was in a room of like 5,000 women and we had everybody dream about if every single woman in this room alone, nobody else, stop saying yes when they want to say no, and they stop neglecting themselves because they were focused on other people, what would be the impact on the world? Right? Like, think of just in your own life, if you stop saying yes when you want to say no, and you stop neglecting yourself, and you started going out into the world as a thriving, vital, energized woman, damn close to all the time, you would be unstoppable. Like, that's my dream. And, you know, I want to say something specifically to moms. When you completely deplete yourself and you focus on other people and you try to pour from an empty cup, you are teaching people how to treat you. And if you have daughters, you are teaching them, I'm expendable. And when you grow up, you're going to be expendable too. So giving that message to your children, your boys and your girls. But I think it's especially internalized by girls. And then the boys will grow up, if they're heterosexual anyway, to expect their wives to be expendable.
Yes, exactly. Fucking preach. Yes. Yes. And that's something that I saw very quickly, as like one of my main callings, because I have 4 girls, and I was terrified a little bit. I was like, oh wow, I really need to take inventory of the messages that I've been holding on to my whole life that I don't want to pass on to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I have 4 girls.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How old are they?
They are 13, 11, 9, and 7.
Okay. So still very, very, very malleable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Wonderful.
And that was one of the main things I was thinking about when I was making the choice to complete my marriage, because it wasn't a healthy marriage. I was a single mom before I was a single mom. And I didn't want my girls growing up watching that dynamic and thinking that that's what a marriage should look like. That's what the wife's and mother's role is. Mm-hmm. No, absolutely not.
Good for you. Yeah.
And I didn't want that for myself.
Yeah.
You know, like, to be clear, I didn't just, it was very much like, it was the biggest act of self-love that I had
absolutely
performed at that point in my life.
Yeah.
Was completing my marriage.
You know, I have to say, I have never heard anybody use the term completing my marriage, and I fucking love that. It was an act of completion. Yes. Because what people often say was my marriage failed. No.
Exactly. And my marriage wasn't a failure. It was just a season of my life. And when I began that season, I just overestimated how long that season was going to last. That's all it was.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you know, we are still, even though the divorce rate of first marriage is something in the neighborhood of 50%, people still go into marriage with the idea that I should be able to make this work for the rest of my life. That is a centuries old notion. Yes. When patriarchy was way worse than it is now. And also when lifespans were way fucking shorter than they are now.
Well, yes. And also people just don't understand what marriage was actually for. Marriage, historically speaking, and it's still kind of, it still is, because we're not evolved enough, and we're not like awake and aware enough of what marriage was for in order to properly change it. So it really still is a business transaction.
Yes.
That is what it was. Mm-hmm. It was securing, a financial future for yourself through a person, the wife, the woman. That's the biggest thing you could ever aspire to be, was some asshole's wife. Mm-hmm. And it was, you know, what your father could supply as a dowry, what the two families stood to gain by marrying each other.
Yes.
That is what marriage was for. That's why it was a lifelong bind.
Yeah.
Because it was the most powerful business transaction.
Yes.
But then we like romanticized it. Mm-hmm. And so now it's all this like muddied mess. But, you know, we look at the divorce rate of, you know, like you said, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50%, and people see that as a problem. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not a problem. Mm. It's just a neutral circumstance. Mm-hmm. It means that for half of the human population, a lifelong partnership is not, it doesn't work for us.
Right. At least the first go around. Yeah.
Well, you know, so yes, exactly. It's just, it doesn't work for us. We're here for like multiple partnerships. Yeah. And that's okay.
I want to say something about that. So I'm 61 years old. I was 55 when I met my sweetheart, and he was 60. He had been married for 10 years and then for 25. Whereas I've never been married, but I've had like literally 28 relationships. And that's everywhere from just dating a few times to living together for years on end. Some kind of like something. And, so after we'd been dating a couple years, he said to me, "Oh my God, Barb, I heard something on the radio. I found out what we are. We're LATs, LATs, living apart together." So apparently there's this new movement, especially among older people, where we're committed life partners.
Yeah.
We are not combining our finances. We are not getting married, and we are not combining our households. I was
Right.
like, oh my God, this is perfect. So we both live in New Haven. He lives on the west end of town. I live on the east end of town. He has a 3-family house he's had for 30 years. I have a condo I've had for 15 years. We're not moving. We're
Right.
committed life partners. And guess what? We don't have to deal with finances, and we don't have to deal with chores. The number one things, the 1 and 2 things that people bicker about
fight over
and fight over. And so we get to be sweethearts. We get to keep the romance in our relationship. And we have, like, all my other relationships, I always went to them and stayed at their house and made their life easier. We literally go back and forth. There's neither one of us is like more invested in the relationship than the other. And actually, here's an interesting thing. So I mentioned, like, he doesn't work and I do. So he provides way more support to me than I do to him, which is completely the opposite of what I've always done. Partly it's because he doesn't work. He also is a very handy person. I'm not. So he does things around my condo and he loves to do it for me. He also loves to garden. So he created 2 garden beds on this side and 1 on this side for me. And I said to him when he was thinking of doing it, I'm like, listen, if I'm going to get in trouble for not watering or weeding, don't plant the fucking garden beds, because I'm not doing it. Like, I'm literally doing nothing. I'm going to look at them and I'm going to go, that's beautiful. That's it. And he was like, absolutely. And I got to tell you, Amanda, I kind of didn't realize this, but it's a lifelong fantasy come true that I always thought, oh my God, I'd love to have a garden someday, but I know I will never, ever work in it. Now, I love me some houseplants. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. And actually, early in our relationship, one of the most difficult boundaries with him was to, like, leave my fucking houseplants alone. Okay. You have the garden. These are mine. If I bring my houseplants to the brink of death, you get to just live with that. No watering my plants. No moving my plants. No, they're mine. Right. Yeah. And he literally, like, he would, like, sneak water. I'm like, no, there's no sneak watering. You know, like, it's my plant.
Yeah.
I get to do whatever I want with it, you know? Yes. And so, like, and that may sound really mundane, but it's those mundane little boundaries that when you set them and you make it clear, when I'm telling you this is my limit, I'm serious that this is my limit.
Those are the little mundane things that build up
to life.
And then you're just like, fuck this, I'm done.
Right.
And it feels like it came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's these tiny things that have been building for years.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then that other person,
dozens. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And the other person's like, wait, what? Where is this coming from?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like, I just that's like brick number 70,000 that I put on the wall between you and I that are invisible to you, but they're very clear to me.
Yes, exactly.
You know, what's really interesting, Amanda, is in this relationship, there have been so many times where I'm in a situation with him, I'm there, I'm present, and at the same time, I'm observing it. And I'm like, oh my God, this would have gone completely differently in the past. Yeah. And I would have been so innocent. This is a really weird example. Okay. So this man I love, his name is Chuck. I call him my sweetheart because he's not a boy and he's more than a friend. So he's not a boyfriend and he's not my partner because we're not in business together. So he's my sweetheart. He is a very strange man. So he hung a painting on the silverware drawer in his kitchen. That is just bizarre fucking behavior to me. So you have to, like, go like this and grab the edges of the thing. And then the painting goes like this when you open it. Like, even though I don't live with him, if this had been me before recovery, I would have flipped out and I would have bitched about it and complained about it and made him wrong about it. But I know what's mine and not mine. And his house is not mine. And it's none of my fucking business if this man wants to hang a painting on the handle of his silverware drawer. I find that ridiculous and bizarre, but it's none of my business. Like, the first time I went there, I was like, what's with the painting? Right. And he was like, oh my God, I love it. And I'm like, on the silverware drawer? He goes, I just want to see it every time I walk in the door. And it's not even a great painting, in my opinion. It's a weird painting. Right? But it doesn't matter. It's none of my business.
It doesn't matter. Exactly.
Right.
It
And
means
so
something
like,
to him.
right. So let's multiply that times, I don't know, 1,000 things from every man I've ever dated. Another thing is he loves motorcycles, mopeds, bicycles. He was a commercial photographer. I know more about lighting than I ever wanted to know, and color and hue and saturation and all this stuff. He goes into this level of detail about these things that is insane to me. Right. But I listen to him and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm still listening. Like, I'm just like, and I'm like, I was a shitty girlfriend. I did not fucking listen to what the men I was talking to, that I was dating were saying, because I'm shocked that I'm still paying attention. And I think, that part of it is that I deeply care about him. So like to a certain degree, I care about what he cares about. Like I'm never going to care about saturation and lighting and hue, the level of detail that he does. And he does occasionally, if he gets a little too into the weeds, I'll be like, okay, we've hit saturation point here. Like I'm good. But most of the time I'm like, wow, I can't believe that I have the capacity to pay attention. But I think a lot of it has to do, I don't have this brick wall between the two of us, and that I'm not in his business. I'm not trying to fix him all the time. I'm not trying to show him what's wrong with him and that he should do things my way. Right. Even though my life wasn't really working out for me, I used to go around and tell people how to live their lives, especially in the relationship department, which is hilarious.
That's so funny that like you have that bird's eye awareness now. And you're just like, wow, I'm impressed with myself. Gold star.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I continually get reinforced for, my recovery in general, but I think especially for me, boundaries, because they did so much for me. I mean, they really helped me understand that I didn't know where I ended and other people began. I didn't know what was my business and what was not my business. I didn't know that I wasn't living on purpose. I always felt like a powerful woman who had self-confidence and self-esteem and agency. No, I was not. I mean, I had self-esteem. I kind of liked myself. That's where it ended. Yeah. But I also at the same time said all kinds of egregious shit to myself in my head that I wasn't even aware of. That now
I know it's amazing. Like the horrible things that we say to ourselves and we aren't even aware of it because we're so fucking used to it.
Yeah.
It's amazing what we can get used to.
Yeah. I want to share one tip. This is another one of the biggest mindset shifts that my clients get. And I didn't make this up. I heard it somewhere. And it's info, not ammo. So when you learn or discover or observe something about yourself that you don't particularly like, it is information for you to learn, integrate, and grow from. It is not ammunition to beat the shit out of yourself. In other words, come at this with curiosity. What is this about?
Not judgment.
What might I do differently? Because curiosity is neutral.
Yep.
It's not critical and it's not like promotional and it's not like sugarcoating things and that sort of thing. It's like, okay, so if this was info, not ammo, what would I make of this? Like why am I doing it? Sometimes we don't need to know. We just need to change. What could I do differently next time? And I also encourage you to use this concept of info, not ammo with other people, especially if you have a dysfunctional interaction that has been going on for a very long time. Instead of when they come along going, here we go again, say to yourself, okay, this is info, not ammo. If there is this long-standing dynamic that irritates the shit out of me, what might I do differently to change the steps of the dance?
Instead of criticizing, just emphasize what you just said. What might
I do? Right?
Me. Yes. What might I do to make it different for myself?
Right. Instead of saying like maybe the person complains all the time. Well, the reason they complain all the time to you is because you allow them to complain to you all the time. So you could say something like, I hear that might really be difficult. I want to hear something positive. So you can redirect them, or you can say, I'm really just trying to surround myself with positive energy right now. So if you have something good to share, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, either let's change the subject or I'm going to move on or whatever it is. Like, you get to not put up with people's shit. You get to set limits with other people. And I will tell you, the most difficult part of setting boundaries is the feelings that arise. So it's typically guilt and shame. Mm-hmm. People are afraid, they feel guilty, like I'm going to be a bad person, or they're going to judge me, or I'm ashamed because I shouldn't ask to have my needs met. And that is a process that can be undone over time. The way that I deal with that with my clients is I have them start by identifying their top 5 values. I have them do this exercise and take them through this process so that they're focusing on what matters to them. I wish I had understood in the beginning the way you know when and where to set boundaries is by what matters to you. I figured that out after the fact. So I start my clients with that. So if you are making decisions and setting boundaries and living your life in alignment with your values, the guilt and the shame starts to melt away. So let's say health is really important to you. If you are doing things to pursue and promote and support your health, and so you set boundaries in your life. In other words, you set aside time, you set aside money, you put effort into promoting and supporting your health, and somebody wants you to do something and you can't because you're doing something to support your health, you're probably not going to feel that badly about it because like I'm doing this for me and it feels really good. And also I get all the benefits of taking care of myself. Or, maybe you just don't even care what they think of you because you're like, look, I'm taking care of me. And if you don't want to take care of you, that's totally on you. But it's like the guilt and the shame starts to melt away and ultimately the reason is because we've gotten into integrity with ourselves. So many of us are interested in our integrity when it comes to other people, and yet we're not paying attention to our own integrity with ourselves. And integrity, Amanda, is another word for wholeness. Can you imagine if you went through your life and you felt whole all the time?
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why my podcast is called Fragmented to Whole: Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery, because I sort of felt like I was a bunch of fragmented pieces floating around in space. Those fragments had spaces between them, and that meant other people's shit could leak into my territory. And the process of 12-step recovery, but especially the part about boundaries, was one where I integrated all those fragments into one coherent whole. I also got rid of the fragments that weren't authentically me. So now I'm whole and I can be rocked by things that happen to me, but I can't be shattered by them the way that I used to because I am whole.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Oh, I love that so much. And I would like to add to the example you were giving earlier of like, if you're someone who values health and you're setting aside time and you're setting aside money to promote your health. So let's say you have a workout class that you love to go to, and someone asks you to do them a favor, to help them with something during the time of your workout class. It's totally okay to say to that person, no, because you already have plans. Mm-hmm. It's okay if you're not able to help them with that particular thing, because literally the only time that would work for them doesn't work for you. You don't have to sacrifice that part for the other person. It does not make you a bad person. Right. And there was a study done on the language used for when you're refusing a request. They put people into 3 groups, and the first groups was to use "I can't." The other one was oh God, I forgot what the second one was, but the third group was "I don't." So the group that said "I can't miss my workouts," only 30% of them actually were able to complete their goal. And like through the whole 3 months or whatever it was, only 30%. But 80% of the people who said "I don't miss my workouts" Like, I just don't do that.
Nice. Oh, I'm totally stealing
Their
that.
goals.
Yeah. I love it.
It was amazing. It just the verbiage that you're using, because when you say I can't, it's like you were saying, there's a crack there for people to push.
Right. And I can't talks about like ability.
Yes.
Right. As opposed to desire, like I don't. And, you know, I will also say, like, you do not have to tell people why.
You don't even need to give them a reason. Correct. You could just say no.
Or you can say, I'm not available. They don't need to know why you're not available. And if they say, why, what are you doing? Say, I'm just not available. Yep. Or when somebody questions you, when you say, you know, like I can't, or I won't, or I don't, or whatever, if they say, you know, if you say like, I'm not coming, why not? I'm just not. All you have to do is say, I'm just not. You don't have to explain anything to anybody. And if they keep pushing you, you can say, you know, I've already told you that I'm not coming.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
You know, and you don't have to get heated.
Yeah, exactly. But even just like the way that you're talking to yourself about it, you know, just like in your head after you tell that person, like, no, I have other plans, I'm not available. And you're like reaffirming to yourself, like, why you're doing this. If you tell yourself like, no, I can't miss my workout, change it to I don't. It's a small shift.
I love it.
It scientifically makes a difference.
Yeah. If you have your hands on that study and can share it with me, I would absolutely love to see that, because that would come in really handy.
I heard about it from a podcast. And so then I wrote down like the specifics of it.
Okay.
So I can find my notes.
Yeah. If you can, I would absolutely love to see it. That would be great, because I'd love to share that with my clients, because that's super powerful. I think, you know, what I teach is like direct communication, direct and clear communication. So what I say is, you know, boundaries by their very nature are clear and not murky. So your communication about them must be clear and not murky. So stop beating around the bush, expecting people should know things. Like, here's the thing. If people should know something, then they would. Like, I don't care if you've been married to someone for 40 years and you've told them like every single week the same thing. Somehow it's not penetrating to them. So just tell them, instead of getting mad and acting like it's a personal affront and they're doing it to you on purpose.
Right.
You know, like if they should know it, then they would know. And stop, you know, expecting people to read your mind, expecting to read other people's minds, and come right out and say what it is your desire or your request or your boundary is.
Right. So I'd like to ask you, what is a good first step for someone who has terrible boundaries, is always saying yes when she wants to say no, but also like maybe isn't even fully aware of how shitty her boundaries are? What's like a good first step for just becoming aware?
Yeah. So I think setting boundaries with yourself that other people don't even know about. So what just popped into my mind when you said that was what I remember working on in the beginning. I was in a 12-step group with 4 other women. Thank goodness, like having supportive people to help me build boundaries. I didn't even understand for like 2 years how important it was having them. So I had broken up with my last boyfriend like 8 or 9 months before I even started recovery. So we're talking like close to a year by the time I started working on boundaries. This dude would email me and I'd be at work. And let's say I went into my personal email for something legit. I'd see an email from him. I would feel compelled to open it immediately. I would be pissed off at him for interrupting my day, even though I'm the one that opened it. Yes. And then I would read it, and then I would feel compelled to respond right away with some big, huge, long thing. And I'd be mad the whole time. Understanding that I don't even have to open that email at all. But in the beginning, I was like, I don't have the psychic energy right now. Or really the availability, because I'm supposed to be working. This is back when I worked full time at Yale University. Like the boundary could be don't open the email, or don't open the text message, or don't answer the phone, or don't respond to that notification on social media until you have the time and energy to really do that, until you're choosing to do it. Because learning how to build healthy boundaries is all about making choices. It's about living purposefully and intentionally. And when we start to live intentionally, we become actors rather than reactors in our life. So we're acting on life rather than reacting to it, which means we're coming out of that victim mentality. We're living on purpose. So choose to respond or open whatever kind of message at a time. Like, think about it and be like, do I have it in me right now to deal with this? And stop blaming the other person for bothering you, because you're the one that's allowing them to
You're
bother
the one
you.
opening the gate. Yes, I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your beautiful wisdom with us. My gosh, I'm just obsessed with you. I like to end all of my guest episodes with a round of lightning questions. So are you ready?
Okay, absolutely. Fire away.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was little, something to do with math, and then pharmacist, because my dad was a pharmacist. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you liked math as a kid?
Yeah.
Awesome. What is your favorite dinner?
Whatever I'm eating at the time.
So you don't have like a favorite dish?
No. I mean, I have multiples, but no.
Okay. What is your favorite book?
Conversations with God. It caused me to go from being a lifelong agnostic to believing in my conception of God.
Beautiful. What is your guilty pleasure entertainment?
Wordscape's game on my phone. It's like a word jumble.
Okay. This question I've stolen from the Low Life podcast because it's just too good not to steal. If your belly button was an actual button, what would it do?
Okay, I don't know why this just came to mind. This is gross, but it would make me poop. I don't know why that is so
funny that you said that, because the woman that I interviewed yesterday, that was her answer too.
Oh, wow. Maybe everybody's going to have that same answer from now on. I have no idea why that. I literally just pictured myself pushing and it was like poop.
Yeah, so, she had just gone through, she had just had a colonoscopy recently and having to go through that prep. And so she was like, that's just still so fresh in my mind. I would want to push it and have it all be out and done.
Yeah. That's so funny. Well, I hope that everybody doesn't say that from now on, but that would be weird, wouldn't it?
What's one thing that you would like to say fuck it to?
Catastrophizing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's exhausting when you live with a catastrophizing brain.
Yeah. And I'm significantly better than I used to be. But for me, that is the hardest task of life, is to not live into the wreckage of the future. That's what I call it.
I love the way that you put that. Yeah. Yes, I know. I'm really good at catching myself. So I haven't gotten to the point where I'm able to where I just don't do it anymore, but I catch it really quickly.
Yes, me too.
And I'm able to just be like, oh God, I'm doing it again. And I let it go.
Yeah. So I change the channel typically. I what's the other side of that? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I just drop the ball. I'm like, oh, I'm holding on to this again. Just release it. So at least it's not something where I have to really work super hard to manage my brain in that way. But it still wants to go there. And I don't know, maybe that's just a human brain thing.
I think so. What I've heard is we're wired for safety and security. So we're always looking for threats.
We're always looking for the poisonous berries so we don't die.
Right. Except for that, evolutionarily, we haven't caught up to what the actual world is like around us. We don't have poisonous berries and saber-toothed tigers around every single corner anymore.
I know. Yeah. So the email from our boss that's stressing us out, it's not actually going to kill us. We need to just calm down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, please let people know where they can get in touch with you. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I moved my mouse for a moment and it made this screen go down. And I thought that I accidentally clicked out of it. I was like, oh no, what did you do, Amanda?
No,
you're still here.
I'm still here. Okay. So my favorite place to hang out on social media is Instagram, I'm at Higher Power Coaching, though I'm starting to favor LinkedIn a lot more. So I'm Barb Nangle.
Okay.
And then my podcast is called Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. So if you're listening in a podcast app, just hop on over there or go to fragmentedtowhole.com. You can find everything about me in my link in bio on Instagram and also in the show notes of all of my podcast episodes.
Wonderful. And we will link all of those things in the show notes of this one. Thank you so much for coming on. I am really appreciative of your work and your ability to just like show up so authentically yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sharing your story. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I love what you're doing. You know that I saw the name of your podcast. I'm like, I know I'm not a mom, but I love that terminology because that's the fuck word is one of my favorite words.
Yeah. More people need to embrace it, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Are you living your one wild life to the fullest? You're not? Why the fuck not? What are you waiting for? The time to live is now, mama. Do not wait until your youngest is in college. Let your dreams hire me for an hour so I can explain how I can help you achieve any goal in your life. You've put yourself off long enough. It's time to pour into you. The link to schedule your 60-minute complimentary consultation is in my show notes. Join the community of Fuck It Moms by following me on Instagram and Facebook at Fuck It Mothering. That's fuck without the U. So FCK It Mothering. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so you never miss your weekly encouragement. And please rate, review, comment, and share. All of these things help with the algorithms, so that way when other overwhelmed moms are looking for encouragement, they can find me. Every month, I give away one of my favorite books and a Starbucks card to a lucky winner. All you have to do to enter is write a review or tag me in social media when you share an episode. See you next Sunday, gorgeous.